Reading YouTube. Someone asked me yesterday if I was going to speak about Orlando, the controversy surrounding it, and gun control. And I've spoken about gun control before, but I think I need to speak about it again because it is rather topical. So the first thing out of the gate, my prayers go out to the friends and families of those that were killed and those that are injured. I hope that they all make a speedy and complete recovery. Um, I would really appreciate, however, if our politicians would do more than pray and actually say, do something about this issue. Now, the one thing I need to point out is I don't take the narrative that this is about Islamic terrorists, because it isn't. It's about terrorism. But we have no proof that it was actually motivated by someone's faith. Just because the shooter claimed it was doesn't mean it actually was. Since I was listening to the news yesterday, it's come to light that the shooter was at Pulse over a dozen times over the course of years and was a user of a social media app called Jacked, which is used by gay men to find other gay men. And it actually communicated with one man for over the course of a year. This man has since turned his phone over to the FBI in the hopes that it might be able to help them. So there's the possibility that this was completely about a deeply closeted gay or bisexual man not wanting to come to grips with who he is. And by making the claim that it was about ISIL, it's another bit of misdirection, another layer of denial. So we don't know yet. And so I'm going to reserve judgment on that until then. But even if it was, it's still not about Islam. ISIL isn't an Islamic organization. It's a terrorist organization that claims to be associated with Islam, but it isn't. And the groups that it most often kills are fellow Muslims. So, yeah, ISIL has killed far more Muslims than it's killed non-Muslims. It kills them by the hundreds, by the thousands. But in the West, we don't seem to care about that. Funny. I think that we also have to address the rhetoric being blasted across the airwaves by Trump, who at this point might as well be on ISIL's payroll because he is aiding and abetting their terrorist efforts. Remember, terrorism isn't just about harming people outside a group. It's about hurting people into their group. And every time Trump speaks, he's going to push a few more people into their group because he's convincing people that the secular West will not accept Muslim people, which is bullshit. Because the vast majority of Muslim people are not a danger to anyone. Islam is not the problem here. Theism isn't the problem here. Social conservatism is the problem. And I've spoken about this before. The patriarchy is a problem. The idea that we have such deeply ingrained prejudices and discrimination against the gay community that some men can only express themselves through hate or that group is involved, particularly if they themselves are bisexual or gay. Because there's anyone who has mental illness can tell you there's no loathing like self-loathing. So we have a deeply conflicted man committing an act of terrorism and a hate act against innocent targets, quite possibly in an attempt to hide who he was. Politicians using this as a chip to be played in some kind of grotesque poker game, alienating and Americans, our allies, using the language of hatred and bigotry to further their own political ends. So if you want to lay the responsibility for this attack, lay it at the feet of the shooter. He's the only person responsible for this. But if you're looking for ancillary individuals, well, you could blame the patriarchy. You can blame toxic masculinity that alone lets men express themselves emotionally through violence. You could lay blame at the feet of the NRA and their casual use of racism in an attempt to keep firearms freely available right into the hands of a terrorist. Speaking of firearms, we don't need assault weapons, flat out. There is no need for any private citizen to own a semi-automatic rifle, regardless of the capacity of its magazine. None. There are bolt-action rifles and firearms. There are lever action. There are pump action. All of these can be used for hunting. All of these could be used for home defense. The only reason to own an assault weapon is if you intend to assault something. It's built right into the name. I don't think we need magazine capacities higher than 6. Why? Why do you need more rounds than your average revolver can carry? To what end? Well, other than, you know, you want to shoot up a crowd and kill a lot of people. I guess that's one end. So there you have it. I think we need logical gun controls. I think we need to make sure that every gun is sold through a gun store. We need to close the loopholes on flea markets and yard sales, where I have seen firearms for sale many times. Estate sales. All of these loopholes need to be closed. We need to make sure every firearm that is sold in America is registered, whether it's over the internet or in person. They all have to go through a gun store. They all have to be registered. And they all need people to be trained to use them properly. People should be required to be using trigger locks if they have children in the house, because way more kids are killed with firearms than any intruders. Toddlers kill other people more often than intruders. And now, my parting comment is this: for all the Christians out there, some of them who are praying for the families of the victims, did you vote on any bills that restricted or denied marital equality to gay people? Did you vote on any bills that denied trans people the basic human right to use a public bathroom? You might be on a high horse, moral high horse at the moment about the fact that, well, no one in the Christian community in America has ever shot this and killed this many gay people all at once. And you're right. But Christians have killed far more gay people than this shooter. They've discriminated against them. They've been intolerant against them. They've helped vote for laws that prevented them from having marital equality, that have protections so they couldn't be fired just for being gay, or prevented from renting an apartment because they're gay. And these things are all legal in some places in America. There are places in America where if you're trans or you're gay, you could be fired in a heartbeat. You can be denied a housing, and nothing you can do about it, because all these good Christians out there voted for those laws. And there are a whole lot of good Christians out there that beat and maimed and killed gay people, all in the name of their God. Sound familiar? Now, a lot of Christians will tell you that they call themselves Christian because they follow the teachings of Christ in the New Testament. Awesome. You tell me what Christ said about the gay people. Go ahead, look it up. Bring a sandwich. You're going to be a while. And yet, whenever they want to quote the Bible about gay people, they're into the Old Testament, not the New Testament. Because Christ didn't say anything about gay people or trans people. The Old Testament did, though. So why don't you just admit that you aren't actually Christians? You're just really crappy Jewish people, because you don't follow the Old Testament the way it's supposed to be followed. But you will dip into it whenever you want to commit an act of bigotry. Then it's okay. So yeah, if that's the moral leg you're going to stand on, we didn't ever kill 50 gay people all at once. have at it. But that's pretty shaky moral ground. So why don't we all take a moment of silence for the victims and their families? Why don't we talk to our politicians about logical, reasonable gun controls? And why don't we tell the politicians that are using the language of bigotry and hate to shut up? Because if we're going to live up to the ideals we supposedly have, let's not just talk about it. Let's do it.